Andrew Tate.
Andrew Tate.
Andrew Tate.
To Andrew Tate.
Andrew Tate.
Andrew Tate.
Andrew and Tristan Tate are back in custody. The controversial social media influencers were arrested Saturday night in Miami.
Is President Trump or the administration, do they have any plans to intervene in the extradition process for the Tate brothers?
No, we've already answered that question.
The Tate brothers are now facing new legal troubles.
Authorities in the UK announcing additional charges.
The CPS deciding to prosecute Tristan Tate, who is 38 years old, with 1 count of sexual assault, 2 counts of rape, and 3 counts of arranging or facilitating trafficking for sexual exploitation.
Andrew and Tristan Tate are back in handcuffs. On Saturday, federal authorities arrested the brothers in Miami after the United Kingdom requested their extradition.
Breaking news to get to, though, as this is coming into our newsroom just in the last couple of moments. This post coming from TMZ saying, breaking, Andrew and Tristan Tate have been arrested in Miami.
Less than 24 hours later, British prosecutors announced 38 additional criminal charges.
Turning now to the new charges against controversial manosphere influencers Andrew and Tristan Tate. The brothers were arrested by federal officials in Miami yesterday after British authorities issued 38 new charges against them, including rape and human trafficking,
bringing the total number of charges the brothers now face in the UK to 59. If you've been following this story over the last few years, you've probably seen pieces of it. The arrests in Romania, the investigations, the court appearances, the non-stop headlines. But here's the problem. Most people think this is one case. It isn't. There are actually 3 different countries involved, and each one is playing a completely different role. Romania has its own ongoing legal proceedings. The United Kingdom has filed criminal charges and is seeking to extradite the brothers. And the United States became involved because that's where Andrew and Tristan Tate were when British authorities requested their arrest. So today, we're putting all of those pieces together. We'll break down exactly what happened in Miami, how this case stretches back nearly 4 years, why the United Kingdom is involved, what prosecutors are alleging, what the defense says, and what happens next. One thing before we begin, throughout this video, we're going to separate confirmed facts from criminal allegations. Charges are not convictions. Both Andrew and Tristan Tate deny the allegations against them, and many of these legal proceedings are still ongoing. Our job isn't to tell you what to think. It's to explain exactly what happened. We've got a lot to unpack here, so stay with me. Why were Andrew and Tristan Tate arrested? Let's start with the question everyone is asking. Why were the Tate brothers arrested in Miami? On Saturday, July 18th, 2026, deputies with the U.S. Marshal Service took Andrew and Tristan Tate into custody outside their residence in South Florida.
Social media influencers Andrew and Tristan Tate have been arrested in Miami. Tonight, the U.S. Marshal Service says the potential charges against the brothers are sealed. However, British prosecutors announced they were seeking the extradition of the brothers on rape and sex trafficking charges. The Tates have always denied wrongdoing.
At first, officials released very little information. The arrest warrant was sealed, and authorities confirmed only that the brothers had been detained as part of an international extradition proceeding. Then, the very next day, the picture became much clearer. Britain's Crown Prosecution Service announced that it had authorized 38 additional criminal charges involving 4 additional alleged victims.
From the Crown Prosecution Service, who has decided to bring additional charges against the brothers, Andrew and Tristan Tate. Following their arrest, prosecutors will seek extradition in relation to the original charges and the further charges they have authorized.
Those new charges were added to charges that had already been authorized, bringing the total number of charges in the United Kingdom to 59. Rather than reading through every individual count, here's what you need to know. British prosecutors allege the brothers committed offenses that include rape, trafficking for sexual exploitation, assault-related offenses, and child exploitation material offenses.
It comes after British prosecutors announced they're seeking the brothers' extradition to the UK on rape and sex trafficking charges. UK authorities say they are now bringing a total of 38 new charges involving 4 additional alleged victims.
The alleged conduct spans several years and involves multiple alleged victims. Again, these are allegations, not convictions. Both Andrew and Tristan Tate deny all wrongdoing, and their legal team says they intend to challenge both the allegations and the extradition request. So at this point, we know 3 things. First, the brothers were arrested in the United States. Second, the arrest wasn't tied to a new Florida criminal case. And third, the United Kingdom wants them extradited to face criminal charges there. But that raises an even bigger question. If the United Kingdom wants to prosecute them, why weren't they arrested there? And if Romania had already been investigating them for years, how did they end up living in Florida? To answer that, we have to go back to where this entire story really began. To understand why Andrew and Tristan Tate were arrested in Miami, you have to rewind nearly 4 years. The date was December 29th, 2022. Romanian authorities carried out coordinated searches at several properties linked to the brothers near Bucharest. Following those searches, Andrew and Tristan Tate, along with 2 Romanian women, were taken into custody as prosecutors announced an investigation involving allegations of forming an organized criminal group and trafficking. Andrew Tate also faced a separate rape allegation in that investigation. All 4 denied the allegations. At the time, the arrests made international headlines.
Yeah, well, Andrew and Tristan Tate are in federal custody here in Miami as British authorities are pushing to extradite the brothers after announcing 38 new charges with 4 alleged victims.
For some people, it was the first time they'd ever heard the Tate brothers' names. For others, it was the moment one of the internet's biggest personalities became the focus of an international criminal investigation. Over the months that followed, the case continued to move through Romania's legal system. The brothers were initially held in detention. Later, they were moved to house arrest. Eventually, those restrictions were eased again, allowing them to remain under judicial supervision while prosecutors continued building their case. Then, in June 2023, Romanian prosecutors formally indicted Andrew Tate, Tristan Tate, and the 2 co-defendants. At that point, many people assumed that the next step would be a criminal trial, but that's not what happened. In December 2024, a Romanian appeals court found procedural problems with the indictment submitted by prosecutors. And this is where a lot of misinformation began spreading online. Some people claimed the brothers had been cleared. Others claimed the case had been dismissed. Neither is accurate. The court did not decide whether the allegations were true or false. Instead, it ruled that legal issues prevented the indictment from moving forward in its existing form and returned the case to prosecutors for further work. In other words, the Romanian proceedings weren't over. They simply weren't ready for trial. And while most of the world's attention remained focused on Romania, another investigation had been quietly moving forward, one that actually began years earlier, one that was being built by prosecutors in the United Kingdom. And ultimately, that's the investigation that led to the arrests in Miami, while the Romanian investigation dominated headlines.
The brothers, proponents of hypermasculinity who have millions of followers on social media, have been wanted in the United Kingdom, where they face rape and human trafficking charges. The brothers are dual U.S. and British citizens who moved to Romania in 2016.
British investigators were quietly building a completely separate case. And that's probably the biggest misconception surrounding this entire story. Many people assume every allegation involving Andrew and Tristan Tate comes from Romania. It doesn't. The United Kingdom's investigation is separate. According to British prosecutors, their case centers on allegations involving conduct that they say occurred between 2010 and 2017.
They were arrested there in 2022, accused of participating in schemes to lure women for sexual exploitation.
Years before, the brothers were arrested in Romania. Some of those allegations had already resulted in criminal charges. But this weekend, the scope of the case changed dramatically. Britain's Crown Prosecution Service announced it had authorized 38 additional criminal charges after investigators identified 4 additional alleged victims. When those new charges were added to the ones that had already been authorized, the total reached 59 criminal charges involving 7 alleged victims. Now, instead of reading every individual count, here's the bigger picture. According to prosecutors, Andrew Tate faces allegations that include rape, trafficking for sexual exploitation, assault-related offenses, and offenses involving child exploitation material. Tristan Tate faces allegations that include rape, sexual assault, and trafficking for sexual exploitation.
After British prosecutors announced a sweeping new case against the brothers and said they will seek their extradition to the UK. Prosecutors say the new indictment includes dozens of charges, including rape, sex trafficking, and offenses involving indecent images of a child, stemming from alleged crimes between 2010 and 2017 involving 7 alleged victims.
Those are the allegations. The brothers have denied all wrongdoing. Their attorney has said they intend to challenge both the charges and the extradition request, arguing that the allegations are false. And that's where this story stands today. You have prosecutors saying they have enough evidence to move forward. You have the defense saying those allegations are unfounded. Those competing claims haven't been decided in court. But one thing had changed. British prosecutors were no longer just investigating the case. They were now asking another country to help them bring the brothers into a British courtroom. And because Andrew and Tristan Tate were in the United States, the United Kingdom turned to American authorities. So that brings us to another question that's been all over social media. If Romania was still investigating them, why were they allowed to leave in the first place? Why were they allowed to leave Romania? This is probably the most misunderstood part of the entire case. After seeing headlines about the arrests in Miami, a lot of people asked the same question.
The U.S. Marshals Service confirmed the brothers were taken into custody on a sealed warrant, and they're expected to appear in federal court in Miami as the extradition process moves forward. The Tate brothers have repeatedly denied any wrongdoing, with their attorney calling the latest case a politically motivated attack. The arrest comes after years of legal troubles for the brothers in both Romania.
If Romania was still investigating them, how were they even in Florida? The short answer is because Romanian authorities legally allowed them to leave. In February 2025, Romanian prosecutors lifted the travel restrictions that had previously prevented Andrew and Tristan Tate from leaving the country. That decision didn't end Romania's legal proceedings. It simply meant the brothers were no longer prohibited from traveling internationally while those proceedings continued. Soon afterward, they flew to Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Their arrival immediately drew attention. Florida's Attorney General announced that the state had opened an inquiry after the brothers entered Florida, saying investigators would determine whether any Florida laws had been violated. But here's an important distinction. Before this week's arrest, no public criminal charges had been announced as a result of that Florida inquiry. That's why this weekend's arrest caught so many people by surprise. The arrest in Miami wasn't based on a newly announced Florida criminal case. It happened because British authorities submitted an extradition request while the brothers were physically in the United States. So when the U.S. Marshal Service arrested Andrew and Tristan Tate, they weren't acting on behalf of Florida prosecutors. They were acting pursuant to the United Kingdom's extradition request. That's an important legal distinction because some of the early headlines made it sound like the United States had suddenly opened its own criminal case.
The new charges include allegations of rape, arranging or facilitating human trafficking for sexual exploitation, and assault. Andrew Tate also faces additional charges involving indecent images of a child and extreme pornography. In a statement provided to the Associated Press, the Tate's attorney called the charges politically motivated.
At least based on everything that's been made public so far. That isn't what happened. Instead, the United States' role is centered on the extradition process. And that leads to the final piece of this story. What exactly is extradition? And what happens next? At this point, the focus shifts away from the allegations themselves and toward the legal process. Andrew and Tristan Tate are expected to appear before a federal court in Miami as the United Kingdom seeks their extradition. Now, it's important to understand what that hearing is and what it isn't. This is not a trial. The judge won't be deciding whether the brothers committed the alleged offenses. Instead, the court will determine whether the legal requirements for extradition have been met under the treaty between the United States and the United Kingdom. If those requirements are satisfied, the extradition process can move forward. If the defense successfully challenges part of that process, additional hearings and appeals could follow. The exact timeline isn't something anyone can predict. International extradition cases often involve multiple legal steps, and each case follows its own path through the courts. Meanwhile, the Romanian proceedings remain legally separate. So even though these cases involve the same two men, they're unfolding in different countries under different legal systems. Throughout all of this, Andrew and Tristan Tate have continued to deny the allegations against them. British prosecutors maintain that the evidence supports moving forward. The defense says the allegations are false and intends to fight the extradition request. At this stage, those competing arguments haven't been resolved. The next answers will come from the courts, not from headlines, social media, or public opinion. For now, one thing is clear. This story is far from over. The legal proceedings now stretch across Romania, the United Kingdom, and the United States, making this one of the most closely watched international criminal cases involving internet personalities in recent years. As court hearings take place, new filings become public, and official statements are released, we'll continue following the facts and separating verified information from speculation. If there are major developments, we'll bring you an update. And I'll see y'all